Hey kids, thanks for joining me in the garage again. Today we're going to be installing a rear-facing camera in the 99 4Runner. I'll go over how to get it wired up so that when you start the 4Runner it'll power up, and then conversely it'll shut down when you turn off the engine. Hit that thumbs up if you find this useful, subscribe if you're here for the first time and like what you see, and you can always follow me on Instagram at Weekend Wrench Turner. Let's do some wrenching. Alright, as you can see here, I've got this little camera. This is going to be set up, usually you can set this up as a dash camera, so you can set it so it turns on and off whenever power comes into it. And so this is a Kuo, I guess you would say. I'll put a link down in the description so you can kind of look at this same camera. I actually got this one from them for free after buying a 4K little action camera that I use as my dash cam. So I also got this little hardwire kit. We're going to wire this into the 12-volt outlet in the rear of the 4Runner on the rear passenger side, kind of next to that little cargo compartment. And then the way we're going to mount this, as you can see, I've got it mounted on one of these little 1-inch ball studs, and then with a long extension here, so that this will basically hang down and point back out of the back of the 4Runner. And then I'm going to take out all the interior, and I'm going to drill a hole and put a rib nut in there to kind of get everything connected up. So I think right now that kind of explains, the reason to have one of these, I guess, is to kind of, with drivers nowadays, is kind of good as far as insurance, to just have kind of video of everything going on around you. So I've got a front one already. I'm going to put this rear one in to have a second camera pointing on what's going on around me. So let's go over to the truck and I'll show you how I get this wired in there. All right, we're over here at the truck, and as you can see, I've got the panel off. If you haven't seen how to take these panels off, check out my video on installing the backup camera, the new Natica backup camera, and that'll show you how to take off. At least on the driver's side, passenger side is not much different. So I've got the little plug. This is the plug that goes to the 12-volt plug on the back there on the passenger side. And so what we're going to do, we're going to pull these out, and then that way we can kind of cut this back a little bit, and we're going to extend, we're going to actually splice in some wires. We might extend it. We're going to take a look here. So the way these come off, this might be hard to see. There's a little panel here, and so I've got a little hook that has kind of a curve to it there. And so this will, if you just kind of pop this little guy here up, here you go, you can see that. And then there underneath here, there's just a little part of the connector that's exposed, and if you just kind of push down on that, and then that'll pull out. There you go. So let's do this other side as well. These wires, the white with black stripe is the ground wire, and then the red with black stripe is the positive lead. So we're going to cut back some of this here and then expose some of these wires so we can splice in everything. All right, so now we've got this lead here, and so obviously the red is the positive, white is the ground, and so we're going to want to get a pretty good length here exposed, because you'll see how we connect these. We kind of wrap it up and then put some heat shrink on it. So I'm going to do a pretty good amount here. Maybe even a little, maybe like, I would say probably close to an inch. Give it a good connection. And then on these, what we're going to do is try to get a piece a little bit down, maybe a ½ inch wide, so you can spread out the copper on the inside, and then that we can make a loop out of that and kind of wrap everything together here. So let's, to do that, I've always used one of these wire strippers here, because this will kind of get things going for you a little bit. You got to be kind of careful with these old wires though, because they can very easily just end up cutting. So as you can see there, got a little bit exposed. And then a little more. So now I have a little section in there. Now I'll have to cut that off here. Usually just using a box knife always will kind of get it going here. All right, let's do the ground. That didn't get as nice and neat. Alternative again is to use the box knife and just kind of shave some off. So as you can see there now, got to have a little bit of that wire exposed. And so what you do, you take your pick here again, and you kind of get in between the strands. That way you can make a loop. So you can see there's a little loop, and then you take your wire you're going to be splicing into it. See, then you can just stick it into this just like that. Close that all up. And then you just wrap it around. And there you go. And then that's spliced together, and that's a really solid connection there. Yeah, once you've got that all in there, then you can throw a little electrical tape on there, cover that all up. I would do shrink wrap, but it's kind of hard to get the right size shrink wrap. I actually tried some shrink wrap on that, but it's hard to get it over this connector, and you don't want to have to take the connector off. So we'll just we'll throw some electrical tape on there. This isn't a really dry little area back in the back. That shouldn't be an issue with water. All right, and then we'll get the ground done as well, same way. All right, so now the next thing is going to be running this wire, and what I'll probably do, or what you should be doing here, is go ahead and zip tie these wires together. That way, you know, you're not tugging on these connections, just an extra measure of protection there. All right, so now we got to run the wire up this pillar here. So Alright, so you can see now I've got the wire all set here, and so I've got it plugged into this 12 volt as we saw, and it runs up through here and then back behind this little pillar here, and then up inside, and then comes back out right here and then in. You know, there's just not enough room right here to get the wire through, so it goes out and then back in. And then from here, cuts across, you know, goes up above where this light is, and then comes out right here. And so this is on the driver's side, and as you can see, I've got the little nut riv nut in there already. And so I'll show you how I did that. I don't have the tool for these riv nuts, and so I'll show you here back at the bench exactly how I get that in. So the way I kind of guessed at where to put the hole, I started out with the hole on the panel. We'll see that at the bench, and then from there I just did a little transfer punch here, and that's how I knew where to drill that hole. And it just misses this wire here, and we'll see here back at the bench exactly how I've got that hole set up. All right, getting these nut certs or riv nuts in is kind of an interesting, you know, I don't have the tool for these. And so the way you do this is you get your bolt that fits in your riv nut or nut cert, and then you put a nut on there. So we'll spin this up a little ways. Then always put a couple of washers on there, and then spin it on to the nut cert. Now, depending on what kind of bolt you've got here, you'll have to do this a little differently. But this one here has a 6mm hex on the end, and so you get this so that as if you're undoing this, because what you're going to do is essentially tighten this nut down, and the washers allow it to spin. And then that'll then, because there's threads only on this part that's not ribbed, and so that will basically, you'll see here, so I've got this to where it's essentially as if I'm unthreading it, and then this one, what I was doing in the truck is have it on there like that, and then you can hold it. And then this is tightening that down. And so you can see there, we'll get this going a little more. So you can see there that it's basically crushing that riv nut there. And so in essence, what you're doing then is capturing the sheet metal between the outside rim and then these ribs, just kind of like a rivet does. That's why they call them riv nuts. Just crank that down. You know, the trickiest part is kind of keeping that all steady while you've got that in the vehicle, putting the crank down on it. So that's kind of how that works there. And so I've got in the truck, I cut off a little 1-inch piece of tube here. This was from an old sway bar link, and so I just cut that down, and then that will sit in there, and then this part will go into the riv nut, and that gives it a little bit of a space so you can really crank that down. So you'll see here on the panel, this is pretty much where I started. So on this panel, so this sits, the back is this direction, and so I kind of just eyeballed looking underneath this panel to where this hole would go. It just misses a cable that goes right on the inside of this clip here, and then I stuck a hole in there, got a little notch for the wire to come out. Again, this is the rear is this way, the front is that way of the truck, and so that wire will come out going back to the camera. And then yeah, get this put in there, got it all in there real nice. And so I think the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to go in the truck and get this all back installed and do a little test. All right. All right, last thing is this panel here. And so what we'll do, we'll get our wire out here, and we'll go ahead and put it down through our hole here. And then we'll get the panel in place. All right, so we got our wire down in our little notch there. And then we'll put this little spacer, get that in there. And then we will try to get our screw started here. There we go. There, that is in there, and that is solid. So, like that. Let's put our light in here. All right, last thing is to get our camera in there. There we go. I guess we'll have to aim this. Let me go turn the vehicle on and we'll see here. Let's just turn this. And you'll be able to see here on the screen if that turns on. And looky there, all works and good. And so might be hard to see there. That did turn on. So then let's turn the engine off and make sure it turns off. And that indeed turned off with the engine off. So, you know, I think that kind of does it. That does a wrap. So appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, comment down below. You can always follow me on Instagram at Weekend Wrench Turner. Thanks for watching. Keep on wrenching.